we'll go ahead and get started with y'all. Okay, my name is Marvin James. Have attended the conference for 5 years. In the past couple years, past 4 years, previous 4 years, I have been the media representative behind the camera, like my wife is. I've actually recorded all the sessions and did that kind of work for Stefanie. But this year she asked me to speak, and I was honored to do so. Stefanie and I have been friends for a long time. One of the reasons why, she'll tell you, during the first conference when we had, I remember after being through that and listening to it over and over again after I was editing, I said, Stefanie, men can definitely get a part of this too. And it's important that men have a space and have an opportunity to communicate and have dialogue and talk about self-care, because self-care is important. Mental health is important. It's a very hot button topic, as we know right now. It's one of those things I remember growing up, if I woke up sad one day, stayed in bed too long, my mom would throw a shoe at me and tell me to get my lazy butt out of bed, even though it could have been something that I was actually grieving through or going through. Times have changed. There's things that we fight now that we're going through from a mental aspect or from having self-care, and it's different. This generation, I don't know how, some of y'all have kids, everybody have kids? Okay, and I have a daughter, she's 22, still my baby, but people call them soft sometimes, but I'm actually proud of them, how they're able to voice and talk about how they're going through certain things or how things bring them anxiety or things that they're going through. I think we all went through that when we were younger. We just didn't know what to call it, right? We didn't know how to name for it. Right. But, they do, and they don't have a problem by saying so, that they need help or they need a break or they just don't want to do that. Us, we go to work every day because that's what we're supposed to do. But I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about the grace to grab your purpose. Recently in my life, I've had the opportunity to put that into action. I worked 25 years for a television broadcast station in Macon, Georgia, called WMAZ. It's a CBS affiliate. And we all know CBS, I guess, who comes on CBS? The Neighborhood and Beyond the Gates. But I worked for that, and I worked in the news department. I also worked in sports. The sports is what carried me on because I got a chance to cover, all the great sports here in Georgia, cover Georgia UGA football and going to the Masters every year and covering high school sports. I was doing that predominantly every day, working nights from 2 to 12, probably 50, 60 hours a week, but I enjoyed it. I loved it. Spent 25 years working, covering other people's kids, and not being at all times the dad that I would like to have been, but me and my daughter had a good relationship where I used to say, look, you tell me when I have to be here, and I'm gonna be there. And we got to that point where she said, Dad, this ain't important, you ain't gotta be here. But then she'd be like, yeah, you need to be there for that. And Mom did a good job of making sure I was there for those things too. But that's what I did for the past 25 years. About a year ago this time, I just celebrated 25 years. I was feeling pretty good. And I got a phone call where somebody asked me, would I be interested in another job? I really was surprised, and I said, well, I already got a job. Thank you, but no thank you. And they said, well, I'm just curious if you're interested because we think you'd be a good candidate for this job. And I had never had that before. I had gotten really comfortable in my job. And sometimes we do that, right? We get really comfortable in our job. It's something that I enjoyed. But I knew I was growing to a place where I wasn't growing anymore. I wasn't learning anymore in my job. But my daughter likes to eat. My wife occasionally likes to have a beverage or something to eat herself and like to shop. So I had to get a job, right, to keep the money going. So it wasn't one of those things where I said, I'm just gonna risk it all. I had to really weigh that thing out. And it was very hard for me to have that space to be able to talk to people about that. And especially men, to go ahead and say, hey, look, I'm struggling with this. I got an opportunity to take another job, but I don't know what to do. I think I want to try it, but this is a certainty over here at my old job. This new job is an uncertainty. I don't know if they're going to be around in 2 or 3 years. And I don't know if I can risk that for my family. My wife and I now are empty nesters. My daughter graduated in December from Columbus State, cum laude. Yeah, give her a little round of applause. And now she has a job. She'll be working in the Beaufort City Schools District. She'll be starting at the end of July. So we're excited about that. I don't know how much we're going to get her off our plate, but we're excited about her making some money and getting some insurance. That's for sure. But I know, right? But that was something that I really had to decide on what to do. And I went and talked to my boss, and I said, hey, look, I got this opportunity. I know I'm here, but I really need to seek this out. I'm sorry. I just need to seek this out. She was very understanding. We worked there for a long time. It was a very close relationship, so it was kind of emotional. I went on this job interview, had a great interview, and then I just came back. My wife and I talked, and she said, what do you think? And I said, man, I gotta do this. And she was very comforting, and she told me a lot about, you deserve this. Why don't you deserve it? Why don't you want to take this opportunity to do what's better for you and for the family, but mostly what's better for you? And I think a lot of times we have to talk ourselves off the ledge and say that we're worthy. We deserve this, to give ourselves some grace, because a lot of times I think we're so tough and work is so hard and life be lifing out there. And there's so much stuff going on out there, and politically we're in such a turmoil. It's so much emotional things that are going out there. We want to make sure that this thing is certain. Because one thing about it, on the 1st and 15th, I need to have money. We need to get that mortgage paid. We need to have the taxes paid. We need to have all this stuff done. And I can't just go around deciding to reinvent myself as I turn 50. I turned 50 in December. I'm excited about that, but it's one of those things I was just really worried and concerned about. So one of the things that I did at my job in sports, working for WMAZ, it takes a lot of energy. You have to do sports, and it's one thing that I enjoyed a lot more because it was more positive than it was news. As you know, news can be disappointing, disturbing, and be very just upsetting sometimes. A lot of people just avoid it altogether. But there's a positive to that, and I'll share that at another time. But in sports, it's one of those things where we get a break from the whole newscast. You got doom and gloom at the top of the newscast, and then you talk about weather, which could be positive. It could be bad. It just depends on what you got going on. But sports is going to pretty much be consistent every time. Your team may win, your team may lose, but you're going to be still excited to see highlights and celebrate the kids, because a lot of times we're all local, so we do all high school sports, do college sports, and then you want to see every once in a while, you want to see your pro teams do well or your college teams do well. So it was one of those things that you had to have excitement to the game. So in one afternoon, one evening newscast, we were going there. It's like, hey, everybody's going to introduce themselves, and then we're going to go start the show, and then we're going to get into the show. And I was like, okay. A lot of times when I'm getting ready to do something, I put my ear to the street to see what the kids are doing and see what's exciting within the realm for the kids. I got a daughter, but like I said, I try to stay connected, social media and all that stuff, to find out what the latest things are doing, or the latest trends. And during that time, I just said, everybody was saying, let's go, let's go, let's go. So I said, okay, I'm gonna kind of jazz that up a little bit. And, that became my mantra, to say, let's go. It started off, let's go. And when you're on TV, if you hear those, our TV voices, sometimes they're very, professional and articulate, and it's like, let's go. But that doesn't come off as much or get the message that you want to say, well, sometimes when you're getting excited about something. So it started off, let's go, and then over time, it just got to, let go. It was just wild. So a lot of times whenever I started a newscast, it was like, let go. It just slurred from let's to LEHGO. You know how we do that. We're going to put swag on everything. So that's exactly how it ended up turning out. So whenever I go out in public down in Central Georgia, a lot of times people are always saying, let go, let's go. And I thought it was really cool that I was known for saying something in the community that represents us well. That's the one thing that I always took pride in. I wanted to represent us well. So once that came about, I said, how am I going to use this in my everyday? I need to take this let go and help me become a better person. So I made an acronym about it. And I said, this is something that I'm going to kind of challenge myself with weekly. So this is the acronym that I have for Let Go. And there's going to be a quiz later, so y'all make sure y'all take some notes and pay attention with this part. So let go. Living enthusiastically with humility, grace, and optimism. Living enthusiastically with humility, grace, and optimism. So we're going to break it down letter by letter, and I'm just going to talk about how I use that to kind of get a ground of where I am at a moment in time in my life. Okay, L. I question myself and I say, how are you living? My wife has a sign at the house that says, live, laugh, love. And are you living? Are you laughing? Are you loving? Are you letting go? Some of these questions you need to ask yourself. This is what I ask myself probably about weekly. Are you doing these things, and how is your life? Then I go to enthusiasm. Do you have enthusiasm in your everyday? Last night, my wife and I went to a restaurant. We had a server who was really enthusiastic. Borderline annoying, but he was really enthusiastic. He kept coming back, hey, how y'all doing? So my wife said, yeah, can I have a Shirley Temple, please? Oh, he said, oh, is that Sprite and grenadine? Oh, I love that. I'll be right back. He came back and he was like, oh, are you guys enjoying your appetizers? I hope so. That's my favorite. And it was very enthusiastic, and we could appreciate that because we all been to a restaurant where you ain't got no service, right? So we could appreciate that, but it was one of like, okay, but my point is you have to have enthusiasm in life. And it's important that you live in a way where you're excited about the way you are living. Okay, H, humility. There's a difference with this word, and we see that a lot of times brought up in a lot of sports athletes. Deion Sanders, they talk about he's not humble, and one of the things, I think there's a difference between being confident and being arrogant. And I think sometimes when we, people of color, are very confident, it comes across as arrogant sometimes, and that's not a us problem, that's a you problem. So if you're very good at what you do, you need to say that. There's oftentimes, my daughter, she's a theater, she's a fine arts kid. She never played sports in her life, and she'll let you know that, but she's a theater kid, and she did pageants, and she was really good at it. And there were times that she would look at me, she said, oh, I know what I'm doing with that, Daddy. And I'm like, that's right, baby, you are. You are good at what you do. And always exude that. You don't need to ever dim your light for anybody else. So the humility part for me is to be humble enough to know that no man is an island. We're all here because somebody else gave us away. Somebody else supported us. Somebody helped us get to this point. And then in turn, what are you doing to help somebody else get to their status or help them up? That's what humility means to me, and that's the way that I exercise when I'm asking myself those questions. So we'll go back. L, living. How are we living? Are we laughing? Are we loving? Are we letting go? And that's important. We got to let go. Let God, right? Okay, so enthusiasm. Are we excited about our life? Are we showing that in everything that we do? Because that's important, because we're lights. We're beacons of light, and people are looking at how we live our life. And if we have a relationship with Christ, they're looking to see how we are every day. Because if you're sitting around here, not showing enthusiasm, people can't see that light through us. So they're confused. Well, why would I need to go on that side if every time I see them, their mouth is always twisted? They ain't excited. They always walking around with the stank face. It's important to have that. Now we go to humility. Like I just said about that, humility, just spoke on that, about being humble enough to know what we are doing and how that no man is an island, that we're all here to help each other. G, I kind of battled with this before, and I had godliness, which is great because one of my favorite scriptures is I can do all things through Christ. But grace, and that's the grace to grab our purpose, but how many times are we actually giving ourselves enough grace in everything that we do. How many times are we often saying, you know, I did a good job this week. You know what? I actually went to work out twice this week. You didn't do it 4 or 5 days like you thought, but you said, I did twice. That counts for something. That's giving yourself grace, because life gets to life and you ain't always going to be able to do what you set out to do. So some of those times we have to look back at ourselves and say, what are we doing to, that is positive, to give ourselves a little bit of grace and not be so hard on us? Because a lot of times we can be very, just perfectionists and very people that are very hard on themselves. And the last one ties it all together, and it's one of my favorite ones. It's optimism. We got to be positive in our thinking, because there's life and death in the power of the tongue. Do we know that? Yes. How many people that you're around sometimes, they're just always speaking doom and gloom, and you just got to keep yourself away from them? It's important not to be that way around people, and it's important to be careful those who make those little jokes about, who everything in a compliment is a joke or a half-sided compliment. Those jokes mean something. And we got to pay attention to those things, because there's so many times that people are in our lives for a season and don't mean us any good. And we have to recognize when that time is up. And we don't have to stick there and stay there for forever. Including family. Including family. And I ain't talking about your third cousin on your mama and auntie side. I'm talking about sisters and brothers. And it's hard. Nobody wants to hear that, right? And in the past, like I talked about us growing up, back in the day, you didn't do that. Because Big Mom said, family is family. Family is getting on my nerves. And family is not helping me grow. So guess what? We have to distance ourselves. Respectfully. It's not every time you see them, it's going to be fight on sight. It just speak and keep it moving. But it's one of those things you're not going to allow them to be in your circle, because you're trying to keep optimism very important. All right? So again, let's go back to the list. L is? Okay. E is? All right. And H? G? O? Optimism. Okay, and then lastly, how do we punctuate that? So when I'm going through these things, I say, how am I going to punctuate this? Is it a question mark? Because am I not doing all these things that I think that I'm doing and that I need to improve on? Is it a period? That's it, I'm doing it. Or is it an exclamation point, where I'm doing it with emphasis and I'm really doing the job that I need to do? Is it a comma, to where there's a pause? I mean, is it ellipses? That's the ... And I'm running out of English punctuation points, but you get what I'm saying. It's one of those things where, I don't want to disappoint my English teacher, but it's one of those things where you have to see how you're doing this. When you go through the Lego, to me, I say, how am I punctuating this at the end? Because we can't just leave it as it is. It's like a fragment then, right? Incomplete sentence. So we want to punch it at the end with a period, exclamation point, question mark. If it's question mark, that means we can do something better about it. Okay. So those are the things that I wanted to bring to you about that. And this is something that I challenge myself weekly about. And you can do it every other week or just something like that, because you need to have that conversation with yourself about what you need to have grace to grab your purpose. One of the things that you can do for yourself to have that grace is to play the good, bad cop, the pros and cons. Put on your shoulder of what side, what's good. What am I doing good, and what can I do better? Because so many times we're so used to saying what we're not doing at all, what we're doing bad. Talk about what you're doing that is good. I think about, what's the show? American Idol, back in the day. You had the judges, right? You had Paula Abdul. So I don't care if you came up there and you sang, I'm a little teapot. She always had something positive to say about you. Oh my gosh, your dress is great. You did an amazing job holding the microphone. But Simon would say what? That was terrible. You got to get out of here. We're going to do that because we're normally embedded to be the Simon. We're normally embedded as people just to talk about the negative things or the things that we need to improve on and do better. But I think it's important that we always give ourselves that grace to talk about the good things that we're doing. And affirmations. How many people do affirmations, read affirmations? It's important. I didn't realize how important it was until I was, studying and meditating on this word that I was giving you all today. And I remember somehow back in elementary school, I'm a military brat, so we lived all around the world. And we had a neighbor. She had 3 boys, and I was good friends with all of them. And I would go over there, and we'd all walk to school. Once we would get in the house, she said before we would go, we'd joke around, we'd eat breakfast. But before we left, she would gather us up, and she had this piece of paper on the back of the door. And it was, I am a king. I am a good man. I am worthy. I can listen. I will do this. I will do right. And we used to read it, and to the point where we memorized it because we read it every day. But it was one of those things where we would joke and poke each other over, I am a king. And we had no idea that we were literally feeding our soul of what we were going to do. And here I am, 49 years old now, and I remember that. And I said, wow, affirmations really do work. I know sometimes it feels weird when you're doing it and you're saying, you matter, you're special. You're looking in the mirror. But guess what? Affirmations are meant to be by yourself, to do it for yourself by yourself. Not necessarily when your husband or wife is in the shower and you sit up here and they're like, what you talking about? No, do it when you have your alone time so you can kind of really get with yourself to do that, because it's important to speak life into ourselves. We speak so much life into our kids, into our spouses, to our coworkers. Those people that are having a bad day, we try to talk them up, but we fail to do that to ourselves. We fail to put ourselves as the priority. And it's important to do that. When I get in the car and you ride home sometimes, you don't have to put on the music all the time. You don't have to put on a podcast every time. Just talk to yourself. They don't know if you're on the phone or you're on your car play. But sometimes I have a conversation with myself. Now they say it's bad when you answer yourself, but when you have a conversation to talk about those things that you're doing positively and the things that you want to improve on. One of the times when I get in the car, I can have a conversation. I can have an argument and not get interrupted, Not talking about you, honey. I'm just talking about what I'm talking about. But yeah, you have that conversation where you can free flow and talk about some of those things. And if you don't want to talk, write it, text it out. Sometimes me and my wife get into little tiffs, and I'll send her a 20-page text. And she's like, why did you send me this long text? You could have just talked to me. Because I wanted to get it all out. I wanted to talk. I wanted to be able to let it flow without being interrupted. And that's me too. Because sometimes you're just waiting for them to take a pause, to a breath, to say, yeah, okay, I'll wait on you to stop. She's like, I'm not finished. I'm just trying to breathe. But it's important to get those things out because we need to uplift ourselves. We talk about self-care, soul care. That's one of the big things here. Find a hobby. Find something of interest outside of being a husband, a wife, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a mother, a father, auntie, uncle. Outside of being, on the membership board at the church, outside of being a worker at your work. What are you doing outside of those things? What are you doing to empower yourself? What are you doing to better yourself? I keep picking on my wife because she's here, but my wife decided to do a bowling league last year. She went bowling the whole year. Ended up averaging triple digits. Give her a hand. And she was like, when she first did it, she said, "Where you gonna go?" I said, "No. That's your thing. That's your. I mean, it's important. It's important for us to have our own individual things that we have an interest in and that we want to do." I decided to do cars. I like cars. I'm not the best mechanic, but I'm learning. Being a YouTube mechanic, I see stuff and try to do it, and we'll see what we can do. Just don't want to mess it up worse than what it was, so it costs me more money. But I also love sneakers, so I decided to do that. But it's important for us to have our own identity outside of work. When I left WMAZ, when I left the TV business, I didn't know what to do because that was so much a part of me and my identity. I couldn't do anything outside of work. Now I have all this time because my hours are different. I'm working a 9 to 5. I'm working different hours. I'm home before my wife gets home. I'm sitting on the couch watching the news. I'm doing all these things. And I had to really find myself to say, who am I outside of being a father, a husband, work? No matter what we want to believe, we are not here to pay taxes and die. We're here to live. And live responsibly now. That ain't giving you a freebie to go and buy all that stuff in your Amazon cart today because Marvin said, live your life. But it's important that we do those things and to find out who we are, to find a hobby or find an interest to give us that self for us. And they talk about this all the time. Getting your hair and your nails done, and pedis and spa dates, that's not necessarily self-care. That's things that help you out, but that's grooming. Those are routine things that you should do anyway. But other things that we can do to give us that self-care is reading a book, and, creating a space for you to have some quiet time, to take a cooking class, to go into the garden. You guys were dealing with flowers earlier. Those things that can help you, develop something of your own. But it's important to have that own identity for yourself so you're not just necessarily being tied to everything and everybody else. It's important. All right, I know we're getting close to wrapping up for time. I want to go over this list one more time with Lego, and then we'll open it up and see if y'all have anything else to say. But the L is for living. The E is for enthusiastically. The H is for humility. The G is for and the O is for optimism. Amen. Give yourselves a round of applause. And I appreciate you guys. I'm excited to go listen to some more of the classes and find out about the grace to, I think, listen, to pray and all that stuff. I've been a part of the praying, the praying Zoom that they had every morning on the phone calls, and it's been powerful. These women are dynamic women of God that you can gain so much knowledge on, and that's everybody. I don't think it discriminates anything, but I really appreciate y'all coming here. Anybody want to talk a little bit about the grace to grab their purpose? Anybody going through something right now or thinking about what they need to maybe persuade someone else or help them?
I'll go first.
Yes.
I'm a natural note taker, so I have to. That's the way I learn.
Mm-hmm.
But some key notes she shared here was grace to grab your purpose. And oftentimes I found in your story you shared was your shift came when you was called. Mm. But even in that shift, did you or were you aware of your purpose or your gift or your value that you held?
That's a good question. I think that, and I think we're about to wrap up, but yes, I think that I always knew my purpose was to help children, young children. And with sports, that gave me an opportunity to highlight a lot of their biggest moments, some of their grandest moments, and be there for the parents as well. And then making that transition over to the Georgia High School Association, that's where I am now. I'm still working with these kids in sports, and that was what helped me make a better transition. I think that if it was a different job, I probably would have struggled more with making that decision. But I think my purpose was, God reminded me that it's okay for you to make this pivot because you're still going to be motivating and pushing forward the youth. So I think that's what made it easier for me to do that.
And my last caption is the support you was given for your then and what is now was
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's so much in that you can get that from. I mean, you get so much grace from people that are trying to uplift us. And I think we need to listen more to it. And, you know, like I said, we don't have to necessarily wait for somebody else to give us grace. We need to be the first ones to do it. And so what everybody else gives us, that's just icing on the cake. But we need to be the ones that start with it. All right? Thank y'all again. I appreciate it.